How could anyone possibly resist a freshly baked drop cookie, especially with a glass of ice-cold milk? But now we have to start with the basics, the classic chocolate chip cookie. I'll start by measuring out half a cup of butter. That's 4 ounces by weight. And I find it's easier to measure by weight than putting my butter into a measuring cup. I've got exactly 4 ounces there. I judge a good chocolate chip cookie on that balance of crispy outside, chewy inside, sweetness to dark chocolate chips, and it's all about those nuances. I find to get just that right amount of sweetness, I need half a cup of granulated sugar and also half a cup of light brown sugar. It's easy enough to make drop cookies by hand, but an important step is this process called creaming. Using your spatula and rubbing against the side of the bowl, the butter and the sugar, to cream the butter and sugar together. And that lends structure to the cookies, so they'll hold together, they won't crumble apart. And as soon as you see this creamy consistency, then you can add an egg. Because my butter was at room temperature, it's a good idea to have your egg at room temperature. At the same time, I'll add a teaspoon of vanilla and just blend this together. Okay, now for the dry ingredients. I'll add 1.25 cups of all-purpose flour. And now I'll share with you my signature ingredient to add to chocolate chip cookies, a tablespoon of cornstarch. I am a big fan of cookies that are crispy on the outside, but chewy in the center. This addition will ensure that they will stay soft in the center. Now I'll add 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and I'll just sift this through, and then just combine until blended. You don't commonly associate the work of a pastry chef with something simple like a drop cookie, but honestly, in my profession, I have made thousands of drop cookies. So you really get a lot of practice in there. There we go, I've got the flour blended into the dough. And of course, where would a chocolate chip cookie be without the chocolate chips? I am using chocolate chips that are made for chocolate chip cookies, and they hold their shape. They also set up nicely after they've cooled. I find that 1.5 cups is the perfect amount. You need to have a bit of chocolate chip in every bite. That being said, if you're a big fan, a little bit extra is just fine. I also like to add 1 cup of chopped toasted pecans. So of course the idea here is to make sure that the chips and pecans are really worked into the cookie dough batter. You can really tell by this dough that every bite is going to get more than 1 chocolate chip. Okay, now it's time for scooping and dropping the cookies. The simplest technique is to just use a measurement of about 2 tablespoons. Quickly roll it in your hands into a ball shape. A question I get asked often about chocolate chip cookies is why you can make the same particular recipe, but they bake out differently. Sometimes they spread and sometimes they hold their shape. It's the room temperature butter you start with that impacts the way that bakes. To fix that, simply pre-shape your cookies, like I am now, and then pop the dough in the fridge for an hour. When it sets the dough, no matter how you started with your cookie recipe, they'll always bake out beautifully. Now, I fit 24 cookies on this one tray. Not that I'm going to bake 24 on one tray, but it takes up less space in the fridge when I chill them. I'll just pop these in the fridge to chill for an hour. And I have a tray that's already spent an hour in the fridge. As you can see, these are quite firmly set now, so I know they'll bake off evenly. A great tip to get ahead on your cookie baking is to actually make your batches, chill them like this, then you can actually pack them up together in resealable bags and freeze them. You need emergency cookies after a really bad day at school. Pull out 2 or 3, let them thaw for 20 minutes on the counter before baking, and you've got freshly baked cookies on the spot. So now, of course, I have to make room for the cookies to bake. So I'll put 12 on each tray. It's a good idea to leave about 2 inches space between each of the cookies in all directions. There we go, evenly spaced. I've preheated my oven to 325, and the cookies take between 15 and 18 minutes to turn a nice golden brown just around the edges. I let my chocolate chip cookies cool on their tray before removing them, so they set up a little bit. I have a tray that's just cooled. That is the hardest part about making chocolate chip cookies, waiting for them to cool just a little bit. But you can see the chocolate is still soft and melting. And the cookies are chewy all the way through. Every bite is gonna have some chocolate chip and a little bit of that buttery pecan.